This story begins on the continent of Tang Sen, specifically the Weeping Forbidden Lands. There, a battle has broken out between humans. One of the warriors who stood at the bottom of the mountain turned to the demon Chu, who was at the very top. The man said that he had spent his life humiliating others and doing terrible things. Then the warrior angrily asked, "Did he ever think he would die in this place, on Mount Khan?" At that moment, the girl, who was also a warrior, joined the conversation. She told the demon that he had seduced her sister and pushed her to death, so she intended for him to die a painful death. An elderly man, but in very good physical shape, said that they had been hunting him for 3 months. However, now he certainly has nowhere to go. Demon Chu stood on top of the mountain. He was dressed in his military uniform, and in his hand was his sharp sword. People kept shouting, and someone said that he would avenge him for his poor disciple who died in agony. In fact, the demon's face was covered in blood, but his eyes were emotionless and empty. The sword he held down was also covered in the blood of his enemies. However, at this moment, a female voice suddenly addressed the demon. He immediately turned around to see who it was. Then he saw a beautiful girl who used her powers to climb to the top of him. She turned to the Chu demon and told him that he had fallen too low. This girl's name was Chi Mengdi. She was the master of the Yunxia mountain of Tai Su Holy Land. She looked at the demon carefully and asked if he regretted it. Chu was silent for a while. After that, he laughed loudly. In his background, thunder and lightning of bright red color broke out. After a fit of laughter, Demon Chu asked, "Does she really think he's sorry?" In fact, the man's full name was Chu Shu, and he had studied for a little less than 100 years and had also fought his entire life. He looked at the warriors who were at the foot of the mountain and asked who among them was equal to the courage to call himself invincible, to call himself indomitable. Then he shifted his gaze again to the girl and said that he regretted only the harshness of the time. And all because if they hadn't disturbed her for hundreds of years, no one would have been able to resist. Meng Di started to draw his weapon and said that he did not repent of his sins. However, let him not blame them for their cruelty either. After that, the girl pointed her weapon towards the demon and told the others to go on the attack as well and kill him. And in that instant, the warriors who had been standing idly by until that moment immediately ran at Chu. Chu Shu didn't react in any way, he just watched them run around. After that, he began to make various arm swings, activating his abilities. And when the warriors got close to him, they noticed that the demon was trying to escape, so they told each other to try to stop him and by no means let it happen. Demon Chu, at this moment finishing his ritual, said to let the divine energy pierce the heavens. And suddenly, at that moment, at the place where Chu was standing before, there was a strong release of energy, and bright red flames flew straight into the sky. The rest of the warriors were thrown aside because of such a strong wave. When the smoke cleared a little, they looked in the direction where their opponent had been, but they did not see him there. That was how Demon Chu ended up losing. One of the warriors said that he had destroyed himself. The elderly warrior, who was covered in blood, exhaled a sigh of relief and said that if he went to Tianyuan to destroy monsters, he would become the greatest warrior of mankind. They said it was for the best, and at sunset they packed up and were leaving for their homes with their heads proudly raised because of their victory. However, in vain did not hope for a quiet life, because the demon Chu, just like that, will not die. In fact, there are a total of 18 spiritual mountains in the Tai Su Holy Lands. The mountain masters Tangxiang, Yongxia, and Tianjian are all recognized as top-level holy teachers. And all the other mountain masters are recognized as lower-level holy teachers. It's been a month since that battle. And on Yunxia Mountain, it was Chu Shu who was lying in bed in the senior apprentice castle. It was the moment when Demon Chu finally returned. In fact, he had been a student at the university before the transmigration, and for the rebirth on this day, he had prepared a great deal of backup plans and rebirth methods. Chu sat down on the bed and thought about the fact that he had prepared so thoroughly for this, but he didn't understand how he had managed to die in the first place. Then he looked around and realized that this was the holy land of Tai Su. He rejoiced, thinking that his destiny had brought him there. However, at this moment, Chu Xiu began to receive notifications that a host revival had been detected, as well as updates to the system's functionality. And then suddenly a system window appeared, giving him a choice. He could be a born villain and continue to be rewarded as long as he did evil. And also Chu can choose to be a hidden villain, and since he has already died once, he will hide to gain strength before he starts doing evil. In his last life, he chose the path of a born villain, going around doing bad things. He liked it a lot because it was fun. But being the one everyone hated, he didn't like it very much. So this time, Chu wants to choose options for hiding. He will secretly become stronger and reveal himself to the world one more time. At that moment, the guy thought that he could become God's favorite, and then he would receive various privileges, such as women. So Chu clicked on the hidden villain option. At that moment, he got a notification that his path had been selected and the download started. When all the data was uploaded, Chu asked for the system to open his profile. He decided to see who he had been reborn into this time. He was a sheltered disciple of the Yangxia mountain in this life. He had an ordinary talent as well as a lack of darkness. Chu was very angry as he was weaker than a chicken this time. The man decided to remember what that man had said. Then his arrival was actually 10 days ago. Man Chu Xiu dueled against a disciple from Tianjian Mountain because he was jealous of a girl. However, poor Chu was defeated with a single blow in the arena, and his cultivation was destroyed. But at this point he thought that since he was now in his body, he needed to avenge him. And at this point, he really needed to build a strong enough body. So Chu began to use various techniques to develop his abilities. An hour had passed since then. However, nothing happened because this body was too useless, had no talent, and was also crippled. But Chu Xiu was not discouraged because he always had a backup plan for such a case. So he packed up and went to the other warriors who were on Yunxia Mountain. The men were sitting at a small table and talking. One of them asked if they had already heard the news that the mountain master had returned 3 days ago from hunting the Chu demon. Then his friend asked in surprise, "Did the demon Chu really get killed?" The man laughed upon hearing these words and said that amongst his peers, a Chu demon might not be defeated. However, he is only a disciple of the lowest saint level. Therefore, he certainly wouldn't be able to escape from a dozen holy towers. The other men supported his words and said that a man as terrible as he was should have been destroyed long ago. Chu Xiu stood not far away from them behind a tree and thought that they probably didn't even realize that he was not only alive, but also watching them. He realized that if he couldn't beat them because of his small strength, he would just join them. He is smart after all. Therefore, at this moment, he immediately came out of the tree. The warriors, upon seeing him, immediately bowed, asking if he was healed. Chu smiled and said that he was perfectly well now. Then he began to walk away from them, humming a tune. The warriors waited until he was far enough away to continue their conversation. One of them said, "I must be very lucky for Chu Xiu, since he is of the same name along with Demon Chu." But then the other asked if he had any secret ties to the demon. His friend sighed and said that he was just making too much of himself. If there were any, he wouldn't let his cultivation be destroyed. After a while, Chu Xiu came to one of the houses that was nearby. He went to the huge gate and knocked on it. The man turned to the master and said that his apprentice was requesting a meeting. At that moment, the gate to the manor immediately opened. When Chu stepped inside, he saw the beautiful and expensive interior all around. He was immediately approached by a girl. It was Meng Di. She said in surprise that 10 years ago, he had been injured in battle and now he was coming to see her. The girl asked if he wanted to ask her for help with his teachings. Chu immediately bowed, getting down on one knee, and asked that she do so. But Meng Di sighed and said that he has a low learning curve. However, he gets into fights, so he deserved such an outcome. Therefore, the master said that she couldn't help him in such a case. Let him leave and don't waste her time. Chu couldn't contain his emotions and got up from his knees and started yelling at her, asking if she didn't know why he had such a low learning curve. However, he didn't wait for an answer and said that he can't become strong without any resources after all. She gave all the resources to his elders, and he doesn't understand why she won't tell him how to become stronger when she gave everything to others. This phrase angered the girl. She slapped her hand on the table and said that it was simply outrageous. Meng Di had already started yelling, saying that he simply lacked talent and was also lazy to study. So how can he even blame her for this? And saying so is just disgusting of him. However, Chu Shu laughed and asked, "Isn't the reason why she doesn't give him any resources is because he has the same name as Demon Chu?" He said the girl just had a grudge against him. Even though he didn't even do anything, it's very funny. Meng Di flew into the air and said that she was never mad at him. She also asked that he should go back, and the girl would look for medicine for his wounds. And he will also continue his education whether he wants to or not. Chu Shu laughed angrily, and after that he said not at all because Master could help him right here and now. The girl stood across from him and asked in surprise what he was talking about in the first place. Chu replied that he had just recently heard that the Master had a healing fragrance property. He came closer to her and said that if he could train with her, he would not only heal his wounds, but also increase his talent. Meng Di was surprised and interrogated what it was he was even saying. Chu at that moment took her hand and kissed it, saying that he was asking the Master to train with him. However, at that moment, the girl removed her hand and asked, "Does he really seek his death? A completely unobedient student?" The Master was very angry at this situation, and she said, "How dare he even mock her in her own temple?" And at that moment, after activating her ability, she began to point her sword at him, saying that she would break his bones and expel him from her mountain that very day. But Chu Shu wasn't going to obey her, so he made a movement with his fingers and activated his abilities as well. And at that moment, the Master's legs and arms suddenly began to be restrained by invisible chains, and she could not use her higher powers. The girl didn't understand how it was even possible. However, Chu came closer to her and smiling evilly asked the Master once more. He looked very cocky. Meng Di, this situation was already starting to get scary. She said that he was an unruly disciple and asked what he was even doing with his master. The boy stood his ground. He activated his powers even more and repeated his request again. He wants the Master to train him. The Master once again asked why he was doing this to his master, while she herself couldn't understand the reason why she couldn't use her abilities. Now she is like a normal person. Chu stepped closer to her and thought, does she really not know what he did? Of course he sealed her skills. Then he took her face, thinking of the day he had secretly used the blocking seal of Samsara while being chased by dozens of saints. It was this precious ability that the system gave him. Using this seal allows the user to completely seal the powers of other allies at any time. And under the influence of divine power, absolutely any woman will obey his orders without question. Chu, stroking her cheek, said that she was over 1,000 years old and her skin was still soft. The Master was indignant and asked how he dared to disrespect her like that. Isn't he afraid she'll kill him? When the man heard these words, he laughed and told her to kill him. And then he asked her if she could not do it, for she could only bark but not bite. He moved close to her ear and said that if he told Peak Saint Sword Master Liu Xiu that she had lost her powers, what would he do in that case? Once upon a time, Meng Di killed her father with a single swing of her sword. Did the girl think she would miss this chance to take revenge on her killer? At this moment, the girl realized that there was no way she could let Liu Xiu know about this. She would definitely kill her because this woman is crazy. Meng Di turned to the training, saying that it didn't matter if he wanted heavenly materials and earthly riches or resources to develop abilities. She would give him whatever he wanted. Let him take whatever he wants. But at this moment, Chu Shu grabbed her by the neck and pushed her against the wall, saying that he didn't need any of this at all. The girl was very indignant and said no way in hell, how could he even think of such a thing? Meng Di turned her face away from his, saying that she held the power of the supreme saints within her, and how could she even submit to a lowlife like him? In fact, he was annoyed that he did not antagonize her or the Tai Su Holy Land. However, she still participated in the chase in order to kill him. Chu smiled and asked if the feeling of fear was familiar to her now as well. With one hand, the guy continued to hold her by the throat. After that, he used his abilities to conjure a book. He said that it was an ancient development technique that she could use, so let her look at it carefully. Meng Di was very surprised. She didn't understand where this disciple could have gotten such an ingenious technique. There were even traces of the heavenly Tao in it. To her, this was simply unbelievable. Chu asked after a while, "So what about it?" However, the girl continued to insist and told him to leave. Chu Xiu appeared very close to her so the girl could even feel his breath. He said for the master to just give the disciple what he wanted. Meng Di tried to fight back against him and said he was the ultimate scoundrel. But Chu Xiu had had enough of waiting, so he started his business. Then, he suddenly received a system alert that master had finally become an unruly disciple, and he was also receiving 1,000 points for doing so. After some more time, alerts came in that the master had paired up with immortal Meng Di, and because of this, his wounds had recovered, and his skill position had been changed. Soon, the master's skills reached divine grade. The speed of skill development also increased, and there were still many different improvements. And so after several hours, Chu Xiu finally stopped. The girl was lying on the bed exhausted. The man started to leave. He received a notification that he was now at the 9th step of skill building. He turned to the girl and thanked the master and said that they would see each other soon. Meng Di was very angry with him. Then she said that she had already given him everything he wanted and asked if he could break the seal. But Chu smiled and said that of course he wouldn't do that. After that, he turned around and continued walking away. The girl started screaming and saying he was just awful. Does she really want to kill her master? However, the guy said that if she didn't want people to know about her sealed powers, she should hide them well. At that moment, he took out a magic orb from his pocket, asking if she knew what she was using the sealing crystal for. He began to toss the crystal up and laughed. Then the girl shouted at him, asking if he had kept the images too. He took the ball back to his hands and said he would keep it as a souvenir. And after that, he turned around and headed towards the door, saying that for their continued good cooperation, he warns that she should not try to break the seal. And even if she searches the entire Tangsen continent, there's no one besides her disciple who can break this seal, unless it's the reincarnation of the divine emperor himself. He glimpsed at the girl and said that as she already knew, this world no longer had a divine emperor. And if her disciple died, she would live the rest of her time as an immortal until her life was cut short somehow. Chu also added that if she didn't believe him, she could safely try it out. Besides, if he died, the images from this magic crystal would soar all over the continent. He walked out of the palace and smiling evilly asked what the people of Tangsen continent would think in such a case. Meng Di started screaming and said that he would surely die. They were learning in hellish pain. She called him all kinds of swear words. She still couldn't understand how such a lowly person who had stepped over the boundaries of Daogong was able to seal her great strength. After a while, Chu Xiu, heading towards home, was surprised that he would come to her early in the morning and finish late at night. And thanks to the master's help, he was able to reach the 9th degree of skill mastery. He would have to wait a bit before he could cross the boundaries of Lun Hai. The man thought about the fact that if the borders of Lun Hai are a barrel of water, then the process of mastering is the process of assembling a tree. And the more stable the assimilation processes are, the better and stronger the Lun Hai boundaries are. The results of the skill development path do not stand still. In his past life, he failed because he missed building boundaries, making his skills unstable when developing. And if so, he must forcefully rebuild his foundations to create the best possible skills. By the time Chu faced a disciple whose skills were higher than his level, he would be able to win the battle. Who knows, maybe those skill foundation resources he buried in this place years ago are still in the canyon. And if they really are in that place, then how will he be able to leave Tai Su's holy lands? By then, the man had come to the quick boat hire shop and thought it was his sign. So he went into this shop and hired himself one of the boats. When he got into it, he swam straight away. But they were not boats. They did not float on water, but on air. Chu Xiu was very serious. He was remembering where to go, then he flew into the space between the two rocks. After that, he stopped near a small stone island with a single tree and thought that the resources of the basics he had stashed away must be there somewhere. When he got off his boat, he walked over to a huge gray stone that lay nearby. He bit off the skin on his thumb with his teeth to make blood come out of it. And after that, he drew some kind of sign on this rock, and in that second, the cobblestone started to move away. Soon, the chest that was hiding behind him appeared. Chu was very happy when he saw it, because what he had hidden was still there. However, at that moment, when he was about to take out his trunk, he heard someone's voice. He turned to Chu, insulted him, and said that he didn't even think he would meet him again. The man immediately turned around and saw another boat pass over him, with several passengers on it. Standing in front of everyone was Peek Ta Jan's disciple. He turned to Chu Nozao his trash and asked if he was still alive. However, he actually couldn't imagine meeting him 10 days later. Jiang Meng smirked and said that apparently Master Yun Xia took very good care of him, reasoning him a medicine and treasures to recover. In fact, this guy who had ridiculed Chu Shu and ruined his skills 10 days ago, the man did not understand how he even dared to appear before him after that. However, he decided not to argue with him, so he sat back in his boat and said he would get back at him a little later. Without turning around, he said they would fight again in the arena in 10 days and see who could do what. After that, Chu Shu left, and Jiang Meng mockingly asked what it was he had said, whether he had heard everything correctly. The girl, along with another man who was on the boat, laughed. She said that Chu would be waiting for him in the arena, and the man added that this trash wanted to fight Mr. Jiang again. Apparently he enjoyed being beaten. At this moment, Jiang Meng used his strength to activate an ability so that the sound would spread 100 meters away. And after that, he said that 10 days ago he had nearly killed useless Chu in front of Master Yun Xia. Ira Sasha Chance is looking to die again and has challenged him to a fight in 10 days in the arena. Then let him not blame him for the outcome of the fight. The people who were nearby were very surprised when they heard this. They thought that Chu Shu had lost his mind. Why on earth would he want to fight again? One of the men said that he actually thought that his sea of power had been destroyed. But he didn't understand how on earth he would fight Jiang Meng, who was in the final stages of development. Everyone realized that something interesting was about to happen very soon, namely in 10 days. At this moment, Chu Shu had already returned to the master's manor. He thought that the spiritual energy in her chambers was very dense, so he decided to practice there at night. The man figured she wouldn't mind. After all, what is his is rightfully his, and the master belongs to him, which means everything of hers is also his. Then Chu, without even knocking, entered the room and wished her good evening. He told the master that her apprentice had already returned. Meng Di was lying on her bed. When she saw him, she asked in surprise, "Did her unruly disciple come back again at such a late hour?" Seeing him coming closer and closer to her, the girl wondered what he was going to do. Chu asked in surprise if the master really wanted to repeat what they had done in the morning. However, the girl immediately moved away from him and told him not to even dare to touch her. But the man ran his fingers over her cheeks and said he had something more entertaining and asked if she wanted to see it. However, without waiting for her response, Chu activated his abilities. Huge rectangles that looked like maps appeared around him, and at that moment, he abruptly turned toward the exit and directed all of them there, saying it was a formation jump. And at that moment, their entire palace was under a huge dome that protected them. Meng Di, upon seeing this, said that this is the same formation of the legacy of the primitive ways of formation. Chu smiled and said she was pretty well informed and he could give it to her if he got something in return. But the girl turned her back on him and said she didn't want it. Chu wasn't going to talk her into it, so he said that in that case he would go study in silence. However, at that moment he pulled out a bag of food, telling her to try it, since she was now mortal. So the girl needs to eat. Meng Di was outraged and said it was all his fault, and she called him an abominable student and said that she would definitely kill him soon. But Chu did not tolerate such an attitude, so he lightly slapped her butt. The girl didn't expect it, so she fell on the bed. However, she didn't say anything else. Chu turned around and started to walk away, saying that the master was starting to annoy him again. He said he had set up a deadly information in the next room, so she'd better not go in there unannounced, because her student still needed help improving his skills. He opened the doors to get out and said that if she died, he would be greatly grieved. Meng Di got angry and said that one day she would definitely tear him into small pieces. Chu Xiu didn't listen to her anymore. He came to the meditation hall and began to read various information in the book he had conjured up. The first thing he did was to look up the information about the item Rising Shengsheng Fruit. It was actually a valuable treasure for foundation building. Chu thought that with this Dao Jing flower, which is revered as the best skill foundation formation technique among the heavens and earths, combined with the stimulating Sheng fruit and system, would improve his skills. The guy thought that in the entire Tangsen continent, no one would have a better skill base other than him. And at this moment, he conjured this fruit and then began to eat it. When he ate it, his entire body suddenly began to fill with energy. Chu uttered the words that he was applying Diao Jing and asked him to rebuild his foundations. At this moment, the notification came that the host's levels had dropped to the 8th degree, and after that, they began to gradually decrease. And before long, the host became immortal. After that, a system window appeared in front of him along with a choice. It asked if he wanted to activate the breakout. Chu Xiu said that of course he wanted to do so. However, at this moment, a notification came in that it had been noticed that the master was using the strongest Diaojing Foundation establishment technique, so the consumption of breakthrough points had increased. It was approximately 100 points per month, and in the first month after absorbing the Sheng strengthening fruit, the Daojing technique used had reached the first stage of breakthrough. In the second month after absorbing the strengthening fruit, the technique used had reached the second stage of breakthrough, and after that, the third and even the 9th stage. Chu Xiu improved. In fact, many people think that 9 is the maximum number and stop there. But going beyond the norm is the path to perfection. There is a huge risk of death and rebirth, but it is as huge as the rewards. Therefore, Chu had no intention of stopping there. He wanted more. From that moment, 7 days of his training had passed. That was when he finally stopped. He received a notification that the real breakthrough was over, and the master had successfully gone through all 10 stages of word creation after spending 10 months and 1,000 breakthrough points. Therefore, at this moment, he did not have a single point left. Chu Xiu, after reading these notifications, was very happy and thought that here he had finally done it. It was a strong release of energy that could be seen even from afar. Therefore, Picton Sen, who lived in another continent, was very surprised when she saw him. She stood and watched it all. The girl didn't expect to see such a strong flow of spiritual energy. She wondered if that pitiful Qi Meng Di had made a breakthrough. The girl's name was Lu Shu, and she was the master of Tang Sen Peak. For a while, she continued to watch everything that happened. At this moment, Chu Xiu was at the very epicenter of what was happening. He was still sitting on the carpet, but he was already in the air. The physical body and the collected spiritual energy had now reached their peak. On this day, he will finally be freed from all shackles, the one that will lay the strongest foundation for skills. He made special movements with his hands, and after that came the notification that the master had made a breakthrough to the higher realm, from the base of the 10th layer to the sea realm chakra stage. Chu was very surprised. He didn't expect the reward mechanism to be so easy to wind up. However, he wanted the demon lord to be shown his reward as soon as possible. At that moment, he ran somewhere to the side, activating his abilities. Then another notification came that he had reached the maximum, so the reward mechanism was being activated. Chu Xiu, upon hearing this, was very excited. He continued to run. Then a congratulatory notification came, for he had obtained an ancient primordial body. The man immediately stopped. He didn't expect to hear such a thing. In fact, the ancient primitive body has limitless resource consumption. But at that moment, another notification came that the merging of the host with the ancient primordial body was beginning. Chu immediately asked the system to stop the fusion. However, at this moment, the fusion had already been completed. This made the guy angry, and he thought that it was difficult to improve his skills while going through breakthroughs. So now also, the ancient primordial body was going to hinder him. He didn't understand how he was even supposed to play. The system tried to cheer up the host somehow. She told him about all the positive aspects and said that in the present time, an ancient primitive body equaled a useless body. But Chu still wasn't satisfied. He said that the system was all flying in the clouds. Who knows how many breakthrough points he would need before the next breakthrough. At this moment, the guy thought that since he had merged with the ancient primordial body, all he could do was continue to gnaw on the granite of development. But then he suddenly remembered that luckily he still had his precious master after all. So he finished his rituals and left the meditation room and went to the front hall where the girl was. When he entered the room, he saw Meng Di sitting on her bed eating the food he had given her. Chu immediately asked if it tasted good to her. The girl replied that it was definitely delicious. However, she then realized who she was saying it to. So she shifted her gaze to the boy and asked, "Isn't that the submissive apprentice again?" Chu really liked the master's casting. He walked closer to her and asked if she missed him. After all, it had been a few days since their last meeting, yet it seemed to him as if several winters had passed. He moved closer to the girl, but then he suddenly smelled something pungent and unpleasant. The man immediately asked the master when she had last had a bath at all. Meng Di got angry and said it was all because he forcefully occupied the back hall. Now she can't even wash properly. Chu kissed her hand and said that it was definitely her student's fault, but since it was like this, he wanted to personally prepare a bath for her. He grabbed her hand and started to lead her towards the exit, telling her not to worry because he wouldn't do anything to her. Meng Di said he was horrible and asked what he was up to this time, but Chuna didn't answer anything. He led her to the back hall. The girl immediately sat down on the floor, and the man started to lift her hands up, said that the feminine body definitely lives up to its name, because even after a few days without a bath, it remains unstained with white jade skin. The master had already tried to object, but he kissed her hand again and told her that things were really bad with her apprentice, so he asked that she let him report to her personally. Meng Di. His mere presence was already infuriating, but then suddenly she heard some unintelligible sounds and realized that it was someone coming to the threshold of the hall. And at that time indeed some guy came to the outer court. He knocked on the door and turned. This man was Tian Peak Master Tang Xiang. He called Meng Di little sister and asked if she had already come out of seclusion. The girl reprimanded him, saying that she had made a mistake while she was developing her skills and apologized for it. However, on this day, she is unable to meet him in person. And at that moment, Chu received a notification that he is a true harbinger of evil, for he had once again earned a special reward with another class with the master, Tang Xiang. Holding some kind of vase in his hands, he turned to his younger sister and said that he had a specially made healing medicine from younger brother Tang Xing Peak of the alchemy cauldron. He also said that it would help her recover her wounds and strength. Chu at that moment continued his business together with the master. Meng Di tried to make her voice as calm as possible, so she said that she didn't need anything. All she needed at the moment was to rest for a few days. Her brother was very upset when he heard this. However, he did not leave right away. He asked if his sister knew that her disciple Chu Xiu and Jiang Meng from Tangjing Peak had decided to duel again. Tang Xiang then said that he had actually heard that his sister's disciple was lazy and had low talent, so he was worried that his losing would affect Peak Yunxia's honor. The girl replied that of course she was aware of the event. However, she cannot interfere in his affairs, so she will not prevent him from participating. But Tang Xiang at this moment took out his musical instrument and started playing it, saying that his sister probably thought he was making too much noise. The name of the tune he was playing now was Phoenix Courtship. He got the inspiration when he was watching the moon a few nights ago. Chu and Meng Di were already over, and they were lying next to each other to the sound of that beautiful melody. The girl was very angry and said that he was just a terrible student, But then suddenly the machine spoke and said that Master Tianjing was excellent at playing the violin, and he was already starting to like her brother. Meng Di was indignant and told him to shut up and not say another word, and especially not about her brother. Chu, turning to the master, asked, "Video her openness. She wouldn't mind if he took her resources for development, would she?" The girl didn't reply anything to that. After this conversation, they returned to Chi Mengdi's courtyard. The girl brought out some of her resources. Chu, when he looked at them, said that they were all 4th-layer medicines and only a few 5th-layer medicines. Meng Di said she doesn't have more, and until he unseals it, that's all the treasure they can get from the storage ring. Chu gathered them into his bag and turned around and said that it was all unimportant. At least there was a top-level spirit stone that was already better than nothing. The guy thanked the master and started to walk away. At that moment, Meng Di thought that she should probably ask the sacred master for help. Maybe he could help her break the seal, and if she fails and her apprentice senses all this, she'll just run away and she'll be mortal forever. Meng Di was scared to even imagine that she could remain mortal and die of old age. It certainly wouldn't be her life then. At that moment, the girl pulled out her mask and thought it was very good that she had hidden it before the guy sealed her power. At least she was grateful to him for not searching her body. Otherwise, she would have taken away the bronze fox mask. The girl might not be able to recover her skills, but with this mask, she would be able to hide the presence of any cultivator. As long as Meng Di avoids direct contact with people, then no one will know that her skills are sealed, at least until she attacks enemies. This mask was actually dropped by Demon Chu when she felt very sorry then, because Demon Chu could have taken over the entire world. If he had evolved properly, he wouldn't have ended up like this. Meng Di, while putting on this mask, thought about the fact that it was too late to think about the past. She needed to think of a way to get rid of the imprisonment of the unruly disciple now, because otherwise she would be under his control for the rest of her life. At this moment, Chu Shu was sitting in his room and suddenly felt something strange. The boy realized that the master had finally put on the bronze fox mask, and that meant that his efforts were not in vain. At this moment, Chu began to recall the beautiful image of the master, thinking of her incredible beauty, and he did not understand how he could now develop quietly in Tai Su's sacred lands. Although the reward of the system is not the best, however, it's not that bad. He had 3 days of time left before the duel, very little time, so now the guy needed to develop diligently. Then he took his blue blood mystic sword and began to develop it with his abilities. It was as if his spirit was separated from his body, and he flew on that sword. This moment, he received a notification that he was comprehending a state and seeking a destiny. He flew higher and higher into the air and soon reached 9,999 meters. And when he reached the top, he suddenly saw some strange rays of light coming down from the bottom to the top. The boy wondered if that was the purpose of the ball. Then, using his powers, he said he wanted to comprehend this destiny. And at the same moment, a single beam emerged from the bright red light, which was aimed straight at Chu. And after a while, the notification came that the search for the purpose was successful, and one of the 5 purposes of the ball is divine punishment. Chu, upon reading this notice, rejoiced, for this destination suited his style. Then he turned around and started walking back. He decided in the room to try and get a breakthrough on the purpose of his sword. If he did achieve this breakthrough, he would end the duel with a single strike. At this time, Tai Su's sacred lands also saw this radiance. Sacred land. Sacred Master Tai Su walked outside and realized that at this moment, someone was searching for the purpose of the ball in the divine lands, and she was very interested. She looked closely at the glow and realized that the stranger had reached the mark of the highest point. However, the girl did not understand how such a thing was even possible. In 30,000 years, only a sword god, a false realm emperor from the boundless blade realm, could reach such heights. Tai Su didn't know if it was possible that someone with the sword god level had appeared in the sacred lands. And so 3 days had passed since then, and there was about to be a fight in the dueling arena in the lands of Tang Sen. People gradually gathered to watch this fight, The managing disciple of Peak Tanjan, who was about to fight, turned to his friend. The guy said the day was pretty lively and quite a few people showed up to watch them battle. Then the friend smilingly said that Senior Link Yun had heard that the guy had recently made a breakthrough and crossed over to the Divine Force realm, and it was really good news. Tang Zhan replied without enthusiasm that this was just a realm of divine powers, and there was nothing special about it. But at this moment, a girl suddenly walked up to them. It was Shu Tang's managing disciple. The guy was very surprised when he saw her. He said that he never thought he would see her in such a place. He actually thought she wouldn't come to such a boring place and watch this event. But the girl replied that it was because of her. So she would have come to watch anyway, because she knows Chu Xiu, and she also doesn't want to see him die that day. Tang Zhan had no way of knowing what she found in that loser Chu Xiu. After all, he could do almost nothing with his life. Then suddenly the guy who was standing next to him turned to the girl, calling her sis, and said that she could not save the one who was seeking his death. One of the spectators laughed and said that actually competing against brother Jiang Meng with his strength level as high as a worm, it was very strange. Then suddenly some man asked in surprise why the warrior still hadn't come. I wondered if he was really afraid and decided to run away. His friend replied that he didn't really understand how Yun Xia Peak allowed such trash to be a little brother at all. At this moment, Yun Xia Peak's fifth sister, a girl named Tiao Yao, came up to them. She was indignant and said, "You praise the strong and scold the weak and enjoy mocking others. This is very low." She asked if this was what the master had taught them. When people saw the girl, they immediately recognized her and knew that she too had come to watch the duel. However, at this moment, their attention was interrupted by the voice of a guy who looked up and said that Chu Xiu had already arrived. Then, all the guests immediately began to look up, and that was indeed the case. Chu Xiu rode up to the arena on his flying boat. When he landed, the girl immediately ran to him and started greeting him happily. Chu Xiu, upon seeing his younger sister, was very surprised that she had also come. However, he was happy to see her. When they got closer, he stroked her head. Zhao Yao told her brother that as long as she was near him, no one would dare to hurt him. However, the guy smiled. He was pleased at such concern, but he said that the girl could take it easy. After all, he had everything under control. But the sister kept insisting on her own way. She said that 20 days ago, she had been developing diligently, and because of that, her elder brother had been hurt. So she felt guilty towards him now. Chu tried to calm her down and told her that he was actually perfectly fine, and the situation wasn't her fault at all. However, at this moment, the guy shifted his gaze and saw a girl in the crowd. He realized that it was the same one that Jiang Meng was in love with. He scrutinized her carefully and noticed that the girl had a pretty good figure, but alas, her skills were mediocre. The girl at this point also began to consider Chu, and for some reason it began to seem as if he had become a completely different person. Jiang Meng turned to his big brother at this moment and asked if we still needed to use the killing wind when Qiao Yao came. However, the guy said that it's a duel after all, so one might as well ask if it's a girl who is capable of shaking the heavens alone, so he should kill, and that's absolutely true. That was when the guy entered the arena. He turned to Chu Xiu and said that since he had come after all, he proposed to start their duel. He asked the guy not to waste his time as he needs to get back to training soon. Chu Xiu smiled evilly. "Well then," said before they started, he wanted to say something to the audience. He addressed the younger and older brothers, saying that this day was a rare event where they had all come together to watch a fight. He asked, however, what is a fight without a prize? Chu said that he had a bottle of level 7 mystic medicine with him, as many as 6, and they were of the highest quality. So he asked, why don't they make a bet? At this point came an alert from an enthusiastic system. It was saying that he was making an idiot of himself in order to confuse them and profit from their resources. So the guy got a reward from the system, namely 300 breakthrough points. The people who saw what the warrior was holding in his hands were very surprised. One of them asked if it was the legendary 7th level mystical medicine. Another guy said that he had actually heard that taking this medicine increased the speed of comprehending divine skill and also greatly increased the chance of reaching the divine realm and breaking through to the lower holy realm. At that time, Chu's rival asked what kind of conditions he was putting forward, and he himself would think that he had only reached the divine realm a few days ago and needed this medicine. In fact, he would never think that a trash like himself would bring it on a platter. Chu already wanted to address the younger sister, but she did not listen to him. The girl thought that in fact, if the master found out about this dispute, he would be very angry. Chu Shu looked at the bottle he was holding and said that they apparently didn't fully realize the value of this medicine. Then he turned to Elder Tan Sen, who was also present in the stands, and asked if he knew of him. The elder was very surprised at first, and then said that it was actually a medicine in a small size, and if it were to be auctioned off, it would be worth at least 1,000,000 high stacks of spirit stones. 6 such medicines were equal to 6,000,000 tall stacks of spirit stones. Jiang Meng at this moment wondered what he needed to put such a thing to be equal to such an amount. But the one suddenly spoke again. Chu smiled and told them not to be nervous. If one person couldn't afford such a thing, they could join forces. In fact, all they have to do is split the price according to their savings at the end of the match. People were immediately excited. They said they could join forces, when other spectators also started tearing down various jewels, placing various bets on people, most of course betting that Chu Shu would lose. Chu watched it all with an evil smile and thought that, as expected, they had bet on him losing. That's when he hit the jackpot. Then the elder, standing back, began to observe all this gain, and thought that there were actually quite a few good things and jewels in there. After Chu had also put in his price, he said that he was declaring that the sport had taken place, and to her, as an elder, in that case, no one would dare to refute the judge's decision. And at that moment, the guy jumped high into the air, and after that landed in the arena. His opponent looked down at him with a high-pitched look and laughed and said that finally, Trash Chu had finally climbed into the ring. Chu Shu immediately got to his feet and began to approach his opponent, saying that since they were in the arena, they should stop talking. At that time, an elder also went up to them. He made a special dome and declared that this duel was beginning. The spectators immediately took their seats and started watching the whole fight. They liked the fact that it had finally started. Jiang Meng thought at this moment that he was currently at the peak of the 9th stage of the Sea of Creation realm and was fighting against Trash Chu, who was only at the 4th stage of the Sea of Creation realm. The guy seemed to smile, thinking, wouldn't it be as easy as swatting a mosquito, rather even easier? At this moment, he immediately ran at Chu, who had been standing there all this time, and landed his strong punch straight into his face. However, Chu managed to dodge in time and then ran off to the side, throwing his punches. Jiang Meng laughed at this moment and said that Chu was fighting quite well, better than he had expected. However, he still wouldn't defeat him. Then he used his power to create several swords and pointed them towards his opponent, asking how he would defeat such a thing. One of the magic swords flew right above Chu's head. The other almost hit him in the chest. However, the guy skillfully dodged and stayed in the same place. Everyone was shocked. Qiao Yao, watching all of this, thought, is it really the heavens have blessed her big brother? Someone in the audience shouted enthusiastically that Jiang Meng was not holding back at all, and all of his attacks were deadly. If Chu was even a little inattentive, he would lose. On the battlefield, the battle continued. Meng once again ran at his opponent, trying to land a punch. However, the guy was once again able to dodge it. Chu even started taunting him, showing various gestures and telling him to try and hit him if he could. The warrior thought that this situation was becoming even more humiliating. He thought that this guy was too dodgy, so it couldn't go on like this. At this moment, Jiang Meng started to pull out a huge magic sword from behind his back, deciding that he would kill this guy now. When he went to attack him again, Chu, watching all of this, thought, does he really want to defeat me with sword breath? However, it suited him just fine, so he decided it was time to test out his new weapon. Chu started to pull out his magic sword. Chu swung his sword in the air, and a red mark appeared where it moved. Chu, seeing this, thought that he was satisfied with this result. Then he started to run away from his opponent. Jiang Meng thought at this moment that he could finally show his true strength. Jiang Meng ran at Chu to attack, came up from behind and swung, telling him to die at last. Chu certainly did not expect such a blow, however. He managed to react in time. He struck his sword directly at his feet, and his opponent lost his coordination. At this moment, the guy was very pleased with himself. He thought that even though his primal body was still undeveloped, he had no equal in close combat in the same realms. He attacked his opponent with his sword so that he fell down and could no longer get up. Jiang Meng didn't understand how this could happen. The spectators, when the fight was over, were all in shock. They did not utter a word, because they did not expect such an outcome of the battle. Then after a while, one of the spectators asked in surprise if Jiang Meng had really lost. One of the guys who had bet on him winning didn't understand how Chu Xiu, being at the 4th stage in the ocean consciousness realm, had defeated someone who was at the peak of the ocean consciousness realm. His friend asked in surprise, did this really happen? And hadn't he destroyed Chu Xiu's cultivation 20 days ago, back in the first battle? At this moment, the protective dome was removed from the arena. An elder walked up to the winner and said that he was proclaiming Chu Xiu as the winner of the life and death arena. People at this point realized that they had lost everything they had bet on Jiang Meng winning, making them feel even worse. Chu Xiu, watching all of this, stood very satisfied. However, at this moment he suddenly felt like coughing, and when he did, blood spurted out of his mouth. The guy suddenly gradually started to lose his strength. He fell to his knees and started coughing up blood again. At that moment, his sister immediately ran to him. The girl was very frightened. When she approached her brother, she asked how he was feeling, but Chu asked if she could help him reach the seats of Qiao Yao's true disciples. Of course, she agreed and started to help him get up. Chu Xiu thought at this moment that since he was playing the role of an idiot who preyed on them, he should play the role to the end and not have them notice anything suspicious in his behavior. He was greatly pleased at the thought that all the implements, pills, jewels, and various spiritual stones which the spectators had set up would now belong to him. Jiang Meng's brother, who had watched him leave, turned to Cheng Lingfei, saying that it was now his turn. And after that, he flew up into the air, addressing Chu Xiu and asking him to wait. He also inquired if the guy wanted to fight him. Qiao Yao, hearing this, became very indignant. She turned to the guy and asked, "Can't he see that her brother is injured? What is he even thinking? Challenging him to a fight?" But he replied that she didn't really have the right to decide, and her brother couldn't avoid the offer of battle, especially if he came to the arena of life and death. He also said that on top of everything else, Chu Xiu took away a lot of resources in one match. He could have just gotten lucky, and the guy was sure that everyone was now doubting the fairness of his victory. He smiled evilly and said that now that there was a chance, why not give him the opportunity to fight Cheng Lingfei? If he won again, then they would all agree to his victory. He was silent for a while, and then asked Chu if he accepted his challenge, if he was willing to go for it. In fact, Chu Xiu was actually quite annoyed by all of this. However, he said that he was currently injured and was only at the 4th stage of the ocean creation realm, so fighting someone at the 1st stage of the divine bridge realm was too risky. In that case, he wants to raise the bet in the dispute by another 30%. At that moment, he received a notification from the system that he was getting a few more breakthrough points due to his deeds. Jiang Meng's brother, hearing his answer, was very happy and said that it was excellent, and himself thought that what expected weaklings, always greedy, and he alone would be blamed for his death. The girl who was watching all of this wondered if Chu Xiu even knew when he should stop. At that time, Chu Xiu walked over to the treasures and turned to the audience and said that he would fight in the life and death arena again, and asked if they wanted their treasures back. They have one more round, and that means there is another chance to become rich. The spectators immediately began to run up to the treasures and report more amounts. Of course, they were betting that Chu Xiu would lose this fight as well, as his opponent was too strong for him. Chu Xiu, wiping the blood from his mouth, was very happy about this outcome. He was sure that all of them would be impoverished. When the warriors entered the arena, the elder created the magic dome again and announced the participants of the battle. After that, he gave permission for the battle to begin. Qiao Yao, watching all this, was even trembling. She didn't know if her big brother could win, and this time she loved him very much and didn't want to lose him. Chu Shu looked at his sister and saw how scared she was and thought that she might not be worried. After all, he had everything under control. Cheng Linfei turned to the guy and said that he didn't really want to fight him. However, he had his own reasons for that. Chu, smiling, immediately asked, "And what reasons could those be?" He didn't really believe that there would be anything worthwhile there. However, Cheng Linfei told him that his little sister was seriously injured on the mission, and to save her life, he needs to get his hands on a very rare treasure that Ling Yun's older brother has. He took up his weapon and said that for the sake of his little sister he had to do his bidding. All he could do now was ask for his forgiveness. Since swords have no eyes, let him not blame him for his death. Chu Shu smiled evilly and said that it was a very heartwarming story. However, it is very funny. They can't talk about death in the life and death arena. And at that moment, before his opponent went on the offensive, the guy offensively attacked him from the other side, thereby blowing a lot of smoke to confuse him. Cheng Linfei lost sight of him, and when he was about to punch the air, Chu Shu struck first, namely in the back. The guy got very indignant and started yelling. He said he attacked from the back and that's very ugly. Chu Shu smiled as he ran past him and said that he would take care of his little sister so he could safely leave for the other world. Then the guy made his final strike, stabbing his sword into Cheng Linfei's back. He immediately cried out in pain. But Chu didn't stop there. He drew his sword from his chest, using his abilities to toss him upwards with a powerful blow. Cheng Linfei's face directly hit this protective shield at this moment. He gradually started to roll down the dome. Chu Shu went up to him and said that he had actually only died because he was talking a lot, and he couldn't stand talking for nothing. All the guests present were in shock. They did not understand how this was even possible. People were really surprised, because they thought he would definitely lose this time. The guests couldn't understand how he did it, as Chu Shu was only at the 4th stage of the ocean of creation. Actually, the technique that Guy used was a mystic-level shadow concealment technique. He had left behind 7 shadows, which meant that he had mastered the technique perfectly. Then people began to realize that they had bet even more jewels, and they had all lost again. Because of this, some cried out in terror and some even cried. At that moment, Qiao Yao ran up to her brother and started hugging him, saying that he was incredibly cool. Chu smiled and said that it was no big deal, because he had done everything he should have done. So the guy walked over to his winnings and started collecting various treasures. He thought that this is just perfect, and this day is wonderful. However, at that moment he was surprised and said that his treasury was full. Then he turned to his younger sister and asked if she had any room to spare. Qiao Yao smiled and said that of course she had, and after that she handed over her pink pouch where she could put her winnings. Chu thanked his sister for that. The girl said he could use as much as he wanted and not be embarrassed. The guy at this moment took one of the jewels and said that it was a top-level heavenly mystic capsule, and asked the people if they all didn't want it. The people immediately cried out, asking him to take pity on them. Some even began to resent him, saying that he had not come to this field for a fight, but for treasure, and that it had all been planned and arranged from the beginning. Chu Shu sighed heavily and said that if that was it, then he would go. At this moment he snapped his fingers, thus summoning his flying boat. As he started to walk past the people who were looking at him angrily, he received an alert from the system. It said that the host was indeed terrible and ruthless, a true evil, so he received a system reward. Before his brother left, Qiao Yao looked at him and said that he had made Zhang Lingyun angry that day, and he was a cruel person. Therefore, he better be more careful. Chu didn't say anything to that. In fact, he didn't see it as such a problem, so he simply went to his home. When the lad arrived at the master's house and went into his room, he immediately spread all his riches on the floor. He had actually won items worth 1,600,000 spirit stones, and he wondered how many breakthrough points he would earn from this. At that moment, he pulled a thin mortal blade from the pile and pressed a button in the alerts to exchange it. However, He was only given a single breakthrough point for this sword. Chu, upon seeing this, was very surprised. He said that it couldn't be. Maybe it was just a mistake of some kind. Last time he got 5 breakthrough points when he traded the mortal's equipment. However, he doesn't understand why he now only got 1 point for an entire weapon. I couldn't understand the notification system that as the host's climb increases, so does the amount of equipment consumed. However, breakthrough points also depend on quality. Chu was very angry at the system. Then he calmed down and thought that since it was like this, he would send the cheap things to Jubao Peak and exchange the expensive ones. That way he would get the most use out of it. However, at that moment, he felt some strange energy again. Chu realized that the master was putting on his bronze fox mask again. He was very surprised and wondered who she was talking to now that she had decided to use the mask. Mengdi was actually on Taisu Island talking to Her Majesty. The girl said that she had told her that Chu Shu had traveled to the deepest part of the lands of beginnings and found the legendary purpose of the primordial sword. However, the master didn't raise the question of how such a thing was even possible, for her disciple didn't have any talent at all, let alone purpose. Even entering the land of beginnings would be impossible for him. However, Tai Su was serious and said that she saw everything with her own eyes that night, so there was certainly no mistake about it. She turned around to Meng Di and asked if by any chance her disciple had changed lately. The girl answered nothing to this, and asked Her Majesty if she supposed him to be possessed. Tai Su looked into the distance and said that she had actually thought about it, but quickly pushed the subsidiary thought away. After all, in order to possess someone, one must be at the developmental stage, at least of the lower sacred realm. And in order to attain it, one must possess one's own destiny. Everyone can enter the land of beginnings only once in a lifetime, and even those who possess the souls of others cannot violate this sacred rule. Therefore, Her Majesty doesn't think that Chu Shu is really possessed. But Meng Di was surprised and asked, if her disciple was not possessed, then how was he able to sneak into the depths of the lands of beginnings? The girl speculated that maybe he had gotten some incredible ability and had passed because of it. Tai Su turned to the girl again and said that she should train this disciple well. Perhaps their sacred lands have a future with a new sword deity emperor. Meng Di said that she understood everything. However, she herself did not realize how good she was at training him. Did she really need to continue being his doormat to gain experience? Chu Shu had actually heard their conversation, of course, and he thought that since Tai Suzi herself was asking for it, she would have to have another good time with him. When the sun had already started to set behind the horizon and the master had returned to the manor, Chu Shu came to her room. He immediately approached the girl and said that her student had come for class again. Meng Di was lying on her bed. The girl was dressed quite revealingly and also did not remove her mask. She turned to her disobedient student and asked why on earth he had kept all this from her. Chu pretended to be surprised and asked what he was hiding. Meng Di said that he was hiding the fact that he had found the purpose of the primordial sword. The guy moved closer to her and put his arm around her waist. Then he asked how the master knew about it. Meng Di tried to remove his hands and said that Divine Master was one of the strongest cultivators of the sacred realm, controlling the rules of the dimension. And there was no hiding from her so easily what he was doing while he searched for the purpose of the sword. Chu wondered and wondered if the Holy Lands had decided to sacrifice their resources for a genius like him. The girl replied that there were no free resources in Tai Su's sacred lands, and if he was even the reincarnation of an ancient emperor, he would have to achieve them on his own. Meng Di thought about it and said that a flower that grew in a greenhouse couldn't handle a huge storm. Chu thought for a while and then said that he agreed with her. But then he moved closer to the girl and asked if he wasn't in this place to pursue resources in his own master, Yu mused, and told him not to touch her. Certainly not on this day. However, Chu ignored her remarks and said that since he had nothing to do anyway, he would like the master to help him level up. He began to gently kiss her neck, and at this moment, a notification came to him that since he was trying to increase his ascension level through master again, he had earned a special reward and was given a 6th grade crane venom jug. After that, Chu began to do his thing And from that point on, a full 6 hours passed, when he finally stopped. The guy has been given quite a few different rewards, his climbing has improved, and there's only a little bit left until the 5th level of the ocean creation. Chu thought at this moment that his effect was getting worse, and the divine fragrance body couldn't be so weak. He speculated that it might be because the wizard's powers were sealed. He thought about trying to unseal it next time. However, it was too dangerous. Then, before leaving, Chu bowed and said that he had brought too much trouble to master this day, so he would be leaving already. Meng Di. These words made her even more angry, and she thought that he was just a terrible student, and one day she would just wipe him into powder. After Chu Shu came out of her resting place, he immediately went to the Jubu Tower. The guards, when they saw him on the grounds, were very surprised. They couldn't believe that it was really senior apprentice Peak Yang Xia. His partner said he once heard that this guy had won 2 fights in a row in the life and death arena. At that moment, Chu went inside and was greeted by a beautiful girl. She said that she was a disciple of Peak Jubao, and her name was Chu Xiaoran. She greeted him. The girl smiled and said that Senior Chu Xiu must have come to this place to sell things. Chu moved closer to her and asked how on earth the younger one knew he wanted to sell things. Could she really be a mind reader? Jubao said that on this day, Senior showed his strength in the life and death arena and won countless spirit stones. The news of this spread throughout the divine lands, and now that he had come to the mountain, it was not hard to guess that he had come precisely to sell those stones. Then she told him to follow her, and they went inside. Chu Shu, who was following the girl, thought about the fact that he had just appeared in front of the tower and she had already led him inside so kindly. He couldn't understand why she was suddenly so nice to him. Soon they came to one of the racks. Chu took the flower in his hands and began to look at it. The girl watching his actions thought that this was all very strange. After all Senior Chu Si had been doing since entering the tower was playing with things. He hadn't bought anything. There was no way she could understand what this guy was up to. The guy was looking at the petals at this moment and thought that these were things from the mortal realm, worth 50 top-grade spirit stones. From this one could only earn 2 breakthrough points. Deathgrass is the same price as 10 second-class spiritual pills. These can be exchanged for 15 points. He didn't know if it could be that the higher the spiritual energy an item had, the more breakthrough points it would get. Then he suddenly realized that if he traded the thing that had the highest amount of spiritual energy in the human cultivator system, for example, his own soul, he would be flooded with breakthrough points. At that moment, he received an alert from the system. It said that he had a rather creative idea. Unfortunately, however, he couldn't trade someone else's soul for breakthrough points. This made Chu feel really bad because of this, as this plan was a pretty good one that he could get a lot of points out of. At this moment, Ju Bao felt a killer flame flickering in his eyes. However, at this moment, he interrupted her musings. Chu Xiu turned to the girl at this moment and said that he would like to buy spiritual energy recovery pills and ascension medicines. He also asked that she bring him as much as goes for the price of 15 million spirit stones. The girl, hearing this, was very surprised. She couldn't understand why he needed so much medicine for recovery. She couldn't understand why he wanted to bathe in them. She didn't tell him that, however, bowing and saying she would bring everything. The boy thanked her for that. When the girl left, Chu thought about the fact that he still had some spirit stones left, and he wanted to see if there was anything else in this place that he could use. He began to scrutinize the shelves in the store, and suddenly a sign that had not been visible before immediately flashed across his forehead. The guy looked at the object that had triggered this. There was some small, unremarkable stone with some initials on it. Chu didn't understand why his intended primordial sword was reacting to an unidentified piece of bronze. He couldn't figure out what was lurking in him. Apparently, he was attracted to his sword's purpose. At that moment, however, he was distracted by a voice. It was the girl. She had already returned and told him that everything he wanted was ready. She also asked if he wanted to come down and get them. Chu held this stone in his hands and said that he would come down now, and after that he turned to Chu's younger sister and asked how much this piece of bronze was worth, because he wanted to take it too. Ju Bao looked at the stone carefully and said that it was useless trash, so if he so desired, he could take it away without any payment. At that moment, the guy handed her a bag of money and said that it was 100 top-grade spiritual stones. He wanted her to take it, because he didn't like to be in debt to anyone. After that, he turned around and told the girl that they should go downstairs already. But Jubao stood still. She asked him to wait. The man looked at her in surprise and asked if she had something to say to him. Junior Chu was very uncomfortable. She said that she would like to ask him for help. Chu Shu realized that the girl had some errand for him. After a while, they went down to the special tea hall. Chu Shu, all at the small table, immediately asked what she wanted from him. In front of the guy was a cup filled with liquid. But then suddenly, when Ju Bao was about to speak, he warned that if it was a difficult assignment, she might as well not even start. The girl was a little upset by this, but when she asked if Big Brother knew about Tai Su Divine Tower, Chu Shu hesitated for a moment, and after that he said that of course she didn't know. It was quite a popular place. He said that since the bloody imperial weapon that belonged to Emperor Tai Su could both wound and protect, this tower had absolutely everything. The weapons were hidden at Tai Su Peak after the emperor's death. These lands not only protect the Sacred Land clan, but are also a great place for disciples to train. The tower trials test students' fighting abilities, comprehension talents, and resilience. The higher you climb, the more rewards you get. Ju Bao, after listening to him, said that this time her request was related to this particular divine tower. She asked if he knew that one of the 3 secret realms of the Tai Su Sacred Lands, the Hongyao Secret Lands, would open this month. Chu Shu replied that he was busy climbing and hadn't been following the news. However, he had heard about the secret realm of Hongyao, a place well suited for treasure extraction. The girl sat beside him at a distance, said in order to enter the secret realm, he needed to enter Tai Su's divine tower and participate in the trials. The first trial involves 300 disciples who are at the 3rd level of the ocean of consciousness, and the first 1,700 disciples who are on the border of the divine realm will have the opportunity to enter the secret realm. Among the disciples in their realm, there are no worthy opponents for Senior Brother Chu. He would definitely be among those 300 disciples if he entered the tower. Ju Bao was silent for a while. After that, she moved closer to him and said in his ear that her request was for her big brother to help her. After this conversation, Chu Shu returned to his room in the master's house and began his sword training again. The guy started reaching different levels, and soon he reached the 9th level of the ocean consciousness realm. Then he turned to the system and asked what the conditions were for breaking through to the 10th level of the ocean realm of consciousness. After a while, he received a notification that he had failed to find the eternal mistress that was needed for the breakthrough. That was why he had failed to make the breakthrough. Soon his charms began to dissipate. Then the system sent him an alert with the things he needed to break through. Chu, after studying the list, realized that he needed all 3 of these divine-level treasures. In fact, they were so rare that luck would not prevent Chu Shu from doing so. There are difficulties with the purchase because the prices will be exorbitant. The guy can't just steal them without a breakthrough. He doesn't have enough strength for that. But at this moment he suddenly remembered Ju Bao's words about a disciple taking half of the monster child soul fruit from Hongyao's secret realm. He thought hard about the girl's words and decided that it was time for him to pay a visit to Tai Su Divine Tower in that case. So after 3 whole days, he finally reached Tai Su Peak. Many different boats were approaching this tower. Peak Elder Tai Su said that once a year during the procession of accepting disciples, the place is very noisy. He wondered if any of them would be able to break the record this time. Another elder, a girl named Mo Fei Yang, stood beside him and said that the disciple had made it to the top 10 while in the realm of the ocean of consciousness, and asked how the elder thought who would do well this year. The elder suggested that it could very well be Ye Fan. He has quite high potential, excellent foundation, perfect talent, fortitude, and luck. Fei Yan looked around at the boats staying and thought that it could very well be him. After all, the guy was a worthy candidate. But then suddenly, the old man and the girl saw something strange. It was a boat that was sailing faster than anything else. She did not understand what this incredible speed was. Fei Yan watched her and asked who it could be. When the boat came closer, the elder said that it was the direct senior disciple of Yunxia Peak. It was indeed Chu Shu. Soon he placed his boat next to the others and stepped out of it. As he passed some girls, he heard a conversation. One of them told the apprentice that she had done a good job and the master was even proud of her. A direct disciple of Dao Yun Peak, a girl named Su Ru Xiu, took her master's hands and said that she was indeed able to do it. The girl was very grateful to her. And a direct disciple of Tanjan Peak, a guy named Ye Fan, said that he too should enter the top 10 in the ocean consciousness realm and ring the bell of Tai Su Tower. Chu Shu immediately walked over to him and asked who he even was. The guy turned to him and began to scrutinize him. Then Ye Fan bowed in front of him and asked if he was the senior disciple of Yunxia Peak, and also gave his name. In fact, Ye Fan matters the main character, and not only that, his luck is quite great. A special aura emanates from him. Chu Shu, noticing all this, realized that he needed to be wary, but then said that he was happy to meet him and asked if he had already heard of him. Ye Fan said that of course he had heard that the guy had won a lot of spirit stones at Tangxing Peak. Chu laughed and said that it was actually all small things. At this moment, the guy thought that big brother Chu Shu was very polite, and he would make a great friend for him. Chu thought at this moment that this guy actually had a simple character, so he was perfect for being a friend, the type of person who could suck all the luck out of. Soon, Chu Shu's name also appeared on the special stone that notified the battle. It stated that he was at the peak of the 4th level of the Ocean of Consciousness realm. When the man himself saw this, he turned to his new acquaintance and told him that it was his turn to be tested. He also told the guy that they would see each other again soon. After that, they bowed to each other, and Ye Fan wished him good luck. Then Chu began to climb the huge steps to the special competition hall. Before long, he walked into the Tai Su Divine Tower itself. Paulin found himself on the 1st floor. When he walked a little further, he saw some red eyes that lurked in the darkness. When he got closer, he could see that those eyes belonged to huge and bloodthirsty wolves, of which there were many. Chu Shu was certainly not frightened. He immediately grabbed his sword and thought, "Are there really only a few dogs that came to greet the guest?" Whoa! Second, the wolves started attacking him. They were twice, if not 3 times as big as the guy himself. However, Chu Shu was a worthy opponent, so he slit everyone's throats in a matter of minutes. These were a few monsters from the Ocean of Consciousness realm, and so it had been quite some time since then. On every floor he was met with some adventure. Soon he reached the 67th floor. There was a completely different scenery than on all the previous floors. Everything was bright and quite peaceful. There he was met by a beautiful girl who flew around him as he passed. She stroked his head and offered to stay with her. In that case, he could feel indescribable bliss. However, Chu Shu did not give in to her provocation. He swept his sword across her throat so that the girl died. Lastly, he said that if she was trying to seduce him after all, she had clearly failed. After a while, Chu Shu had already reached the 68th floor. There he found himself in some kind of arena and saw 4 multicolored lights. In fact, these lights turned out to be 4 warriors who belonged to a special kind of animal. Chu Shu gripped his sword harder. He looked closely and realized that these 4 were the last guardians of the ocean consciousness realm. Then the guy quickly ran through all 4 of them, confusing them and slashing them with his sword. The guards didn't even have time to realize anything. After another sufficient amount of time he spent in the Divine Tower, Chu finally reached the 98th floor. When he first came to this room, he immediately saw Tai Su Wan in front of him. At this moment, she was at the peak of the 9th level of the Ocean of Consciousness realm. Chu realized that she had the same realm as him. After all, he had upgraded quite recently. However, he cannot realize just how strong she really is. As he began to scrutinize her face, he asked, "Is she really the current Emperor Tai Su?" The girl didn't say anything to that. She just looked at him and was silent. Chu Shu then smiled evilly and said that this was indeed a primordial emperor. He then laughed loudly. After that, the guy went on the offensive, offering the emperor a one-on-one fight. And so, when he was already close to the girl's head, she immediately raised her sword and blocked his attack. Chushu was surprised when he saw this. However, he was not going to give up and tried to give her another blow, but with his foot. But the girl, without much effort, pushed his leg away so that the guy flew even a few meters back. Chushu was able to orient himself in time and did not fall down. In fact, it was unbelievable, because even with the strength of a primordial saint body, he cannot touch the Tai Suji of the same realm. At that moment, he realized that there was absolutely no point in this battle of theirs, for there would be no result. Then the girl immediately ran at him. She was about to throw her punch, however. Chu placed his hand to block it. However, at that moment, something happened that the two of them did not expect. When their hands touched, there was a barrier between them that prevented them from attacking each other. Chushu felt an intense pressure. He channeled all the energy in his hand to break this barrier. He really wanted to defeat the girl in this fight. He wanted to fight her eye for eye, life for life. The invasion had to be to the death. It was either her or him. This was Chushu's fighting style. Soon, this barrier shattered and the girl was about to launch her strike. However, she missed, and Chushu was able to grab her. Chu actually used the sword's purpose and almost lost. However, at this moment, he was holding the girl by the throat and choking her, which meant that the 98th floor had been passed. His rival fell breathlessly into the flowers that were sown all over the field. When the stage was completed, Chushu swallowed the flames, and he soon moved to a completely different place. He was still in the Divine Tower, on the 98th floor. In front of him were 4 stones with different designs. When Chushu shifted, he touched his head, which was in great pain. In fact, he couldn't remember who he was fighting right now. This frightened the guy. He didn't understand why he couldn't remember anything. However, he then realized that it didn't matter at all. After all, he had no time to think about it. Then he looked at these stones that were right in front of him. Chushu began to scrutinize them carefully. He thought, did the tower really want him to choose one? Then he decided on his choice after all. He walked over to one of the stones and used his power, which encompassed that stone immediately. At this point, he received a notice to learn ball handling techniques. Fill in the more. He learns, the greater the result. Chushu assumed the familiar pose he had trained in and realized that these were sword techniques. He turned to the system and asked for it to spend breakthrough points to learn the techniques. The system immediately began to do his bidding, and before long, the master was already able to master the mastery of 1,000 different techniques. At this moment, he received a notification called "Everything Rests, Everything Dies," and it was written that the first form had been completed. Chushu had a completely different life that time. The system had the ability to break through, and in addition to the primordial sacred body and the murderous divine purpose of the ball, he now needed to utilize those advantages to the fullest. The primordial sacred body was invincible flesh, and the divine killing purpose ball had a peerless blade. Chu didn't know how he could get even one step closer to the power they concealed within them. For some time he sat and pondered over the solution to this problem. But then a brilliant idea came to him, and he remembered the sacred blade. In fact, only the sacred blade would allow him to fully release all the benefits of the divine killing purpose of the ball and the primordial divine body. Then the boy, with the help of his powers, conjured up this sword. He took it in his hands and felt a heavy weight. When he tried to make a strike with it, the ground he struck a few meters away immediately split open. At that time, a notification came to him that his first form assignment had been completed. Chushu was very happy about this and decided that it was now time for him to rest. The boy thought that this blow was incredible, even for him. He doubted that anyone would even be able to dodge such an intimidating attack. Chu thought that he hadn't wasted his 1,000 points after all. At this time, people were still standing near the tower waiting for the end. Everyone was very excited. Then, suddenly, the guy who was standing next to Ju Bao asked, "Does she really believe that Chushu can reach the 80th floor and obtain the imperial silver sand to extract her puking mother? He said that he could get some medicine from Auntie Meng Di if she listened to him." In fact, 10 days had already passed since the guy had just entered this tower. However, he still hasn't come out. The guy said that he must have died in the tower a long time ago. And every time the gate opens, more and more corpses of students are taken out of it. But Jubao got angry and told him not to say such things. Water hoped that Brother Chu Shu was all right. Since he was so strong, he should be all right. At that moment, however, a bell sounded to announce the change in the inscriptions on the stone. All the people immediately went over to see what had appeared. Yes, an inscription had appeared to him saying that Yun Xiaoping's direct disciple Chu Shu had reached the 99th floor while at the ocean consciousness realm level. People, after reading this message, did not understand how to react to it. There was complete silence. They were stunned by such information. However, only Ju Bao was incredibly happy after reading this message, because it meant that he would be done soon, and he was fine. And before long, Chu Shu himself came out of the tower. He smiled happily at the crowd and apologized for keeping them waiting. The girl immediately went over to him and said cheerfully that he was finally out. She didn't doubt him for a minute. When the guy walked past people, they would cheerfully turn to him and tell him he was amazing and did an incredible job in the tower. A lot of people asked for his autograph. Some of them shouted for him to marry her. Chu Shu was actually pleased to hear this. After all, before, all the disciples were waiting for him to die as soon as they saw him. After all, he was a demon Chu. However, they all call him brother now. The boy laughed and thought that choice was really more important than hard work. His atrocities were too severe and straightforward. He was young and foolish in the past. In reality, a villain shouldn't really stand out and just wreak his havoc in secret. Suddenly, when Chu Shu was signing another piece of paper for his fans to calm down, the elders suddenly flew up to them from behind. The elder turned to him and told him that he had done well enough. He smiled happily at him. The girl congratulated him on his victory and told him that the sacred master wanted to meet him, so he should follow them. Before long, all three of them arrived at Taisu's castle. At the head was Taisu herself, of course, and next to her was Meng Di in her mask. Chu Shu bowed and introduced himself as soon as he walked in, saying that here he was to meet Master and his divine countenance. Taisu said that she was pleased to see a disciple who had crossed the limits of the ancients. She also said that he had performed excellently on this day. Chu laughed. After that, he said that he had actually broken the records of their sacred lands and asked if he could expect any rewards in return. Of course, when would he ask for more rewards? Except, as we are now, his master suddenly spoke up and told him to let the unhumbled apprentice know his place. However, Taisu calmed the girl down and said that it was actually all right. She was wondering what her student wanted as a reward. Chu bowed and said that he wished to obtain the demon infant soul fruit, the 10,000 level healing spiritual milk, or the golden Bodhi flower. Meng Di, hearing this, became very angry. She thought that he was too greedy, and even in the reward he was looking for a way to take more for himself. Taisu calmly replied that the sacred land's armory is full of all sorts of divine treasures. However, it does not store the things he desires, but in that case, she can send someone to help him find them. However, of course, it would take quite a long time, and she could not vouch for a positive result. Chu thought for a while, and after that, he said that he would wait. The guy realized that she was pretty cooperative, and if he could use the tears of the mother and son seal of samsara on her, he could get her under control too. At this point, he received an alert that he had come up with a very good plan, and then, as Chu stood, he began to use his abilities. Soon, the seal was applied, and a notification came that he would be able to remove the seal. The number of uses would increase. It could only be used on 2 people at a time. Chu Shu was very surprised when he read it. He didn't know that a mother and son seal could be used on 2 people at the same time. At that moment, he visualized how he would use the 2 girls. The system approved his intention and said that as a result, he unlocked a very cool reward, namely a squid ink pill. In fact, these ancient enhancing pills perfect the actions of the poison. There are 3 kinds of them, and with various thousands of formulas, the poison can be improved to the highest level. And if you combine all 3 types into one, a pill that improves the subjects of millennials will be formed, possibly creating the highest ranked drug that was created by the emperor. Chu Shu, upon seeing this, thought that it was very tempting after all. Could a villain be called a villain without the skill of using poison? Tang Su suddenly spoke up. She said that the 8th 3 counts treasures could increase his strength to the maximum, and she hoped that he would use them wisely. The boy bowed again, thanking her, and then gestured for the master to go with him, and they began to leave. The girl, who continued to sit in her seat, still couldn't understand where her strong sense of danger was coming from. She wondered if there was a traitor hiding somewhere nearby. But Tang Su suggested that she had probably been isolated for too long and had become too sensitive. She thought it would be good for her to get some fresh air. At that time, Chu Shu, along with the master, were already heading towards the direction of the house. They were on the flying ship, specifically inside the main room. The maids brought in and began pouring hot tea. However, Chu soon asked that they leave, for he would have something to say to the master. Mengdi was about to object, but realized it was better not to. Then the maid looked at her in surprise and asked if they really had to leave. The girl replied that it was actually fine and nothing was wrong, so they could leave them alone. When the girls came out, Chu Shu immediately used his magic powers. He put sound insulation on the doors so that no one would overhear them. He then turned to the master and said that they were now on this ship and suggested that they should not miss such an excellent opportunity. Mengdi got angry and started yelling. She said that he was an ignorant student. Did he really think of bullying her again? At that moment, the girl was finally able to remove the mask. She said that he was using it as some kind of toy or his own thing. Chu Shu moved closer to her and asked the master if she saw anger in his eyes. The girl asked in surprise if that wasn't the case. Then the guy got up from the table, took the mask from her hands, and asked if she wanted her powers back. Mengdi was actually very scared at that moment. She tried to hold back her trembling and tried to say in as confident a voice as possible that of course she wanted to. Chu looked at the mask and said that this thing wasn't that bad. It hid her cultivation level perfectly, and even Great Tai Suji didn't notice the catch. He sat down next to the girl, then she turned away from him and said that apparently his stealth tricks weren't so bad. Mengdi blushed slightly in embarrassment. She said that after what they had been doing, there should have been a trace of divine aura left on his body. Chu. But that didn't answer anything. He just sat there looking at her and smiling. Then the girl tried to calm down a little. She turned to her disciple and asked if he had just talked about returning cultivation. Chu Shu laughed even more and said that this was exactly what he was talking about. The girl then asked, "What are the terms and conditions? After all, he's not that generous." At that moment, he took out a box of some kind, inside of which was a thing. He handed it to the master and told her to try it on first. Mengdi immediately started looking at this clothing that was unknown to her. The guy told her to just put it on, and then she would get a reward if she used it. At this point, the master immediately tried on his gift. It was Capron pantyhose. However, Chu stepped closer to her and started gently stroking her leg. The girl immediately became indignant and started to pull his hand away, asking what he was doing. She called him a worthless student again. Then the boy smiled and asked, "Is she really still going to call him that?" Chu moved closer to her and told her in a gruff voice to just call him master. Mengdi immediately turned her back on him and told him to keep dreaming. She would never call him that for the rest of her life. Chu Shu. It was only amusing. He said that apparently she was very fond of being stubborn, but that wouldn't stop him. And so, when 10 minutes had passed, the boy continued to coax her. Of course, he used his methods to get the master to call him that. The girl still continued to resist and said that she wouldn't call him that. She is a master divine warrior and will not give in to him for any reason. Chu Shu turned to the dear master in a quiet voice and said that if she didn't call him that, he would make sure that her moans would be heard by everyone around her, as well as all those on the ship right now. Mengdi was still trying to somehow stop him from doing so and told him not to dare cross the line. However, it was already too late. Chu Shu always gets his way no matter what. The girl got very angry and told the unruly student that she would kill him at the first opportunity. But the boy still didn't stop. When morning came, they finally returned to the mountain where Chu Shu resides. The guy was just returning to his home. He had already managed to give the silver imperial sand to Chu Xiaoran. He was very curious as to how Tai Suji would react to this. In his hands, he was holding your convolution. The guy thought that Chu Xiaoran's report was quite detailed as well. Apparently that infant demon soul fruit has yet to be found. If he wants to conquer the elusive demon-abandoned lands, then he needs to increase his cultivation. At that moment, he passed by two guys. One of them suddenly shouted happily and said that his divine list had just been updated. His friend said that, of course, since Demon Chu had long since died, it was only natural that someone else would take his place. They were actually records of major and minor events of the Tangsen continent, a list of the most powerful ones. On the other side was a rumor column. One topic was worth 1 spiritual stone. Chu Shu smirked as he walked past them. He thought that they actually had no idea that the demon Chu they were currently discussing was alive and very close to them. Well, it's all of a sudden. This guy who was holding the paper said someone else had advanced in the lists of low-level saints. Previously, the Saint Yan Xiang Ling, under the patronage of the Yin-Yan god, was there. However, now it was Liu Hongyi who was there. And Around was very surprised and asked how it was. After all, Zhanxiang was his goddess, and he didn't know who this new and beautiful person was, if she was even. Chu, upon hearing Liu Hongyi's name, became interested immediately. He had once decided to approach these guys. When he approached them, he immediately bid them good morning, and afterward asked if they could sell him the paper. The guy who was holding just this paper in his hand said that Big Brother Chu could certainly take it for free. After that, he handed him the newspaper. Chu Shu, after taking it, immediately began to walk away and scrutinize the contents. The guy then turned to his friend and asked if he had heard. Big Brother Chu made it to the divine list. He's not what he seems, so it would be best not to mess with him. The friend said that of course he had heard about it. He actually wondered how he had become so strong in such a short time. Chu, who was reading the newspaper that contained all the news of the Tangsen continent, actually saw that Hongyi had indeed become 4th on the list. But then, suddenly, he read that the divine daughter of Liu Hongyi was wanted. She had betrayed the Red Dust Sword sect, and the reward for her was 1,000,000 divine yuan stones. According to the leader of the Red Dust Sword clan, the girl attacked the leader to avenge Demon Chu, who had the graveyard surrounded and killed. Sounded an alarm. All those who participated in the encirclement and killing of Demon Chu, let them be careful not to underestimate this girl. Chu Shu, after reading all of this, was surprised. However, he was pleased that this silly girl was sticking up for him. When they first met, it was late at night. The two of them were lying in a clearing watching the stars. The girl said her name was Liu Hongyi, and he already knew that her whole family was dead. Then the guy said his name. He didn't really even look at her, but Chu said his family was on the other side of the stars, so he wouldn't be able to see them ever again. Liu Hong smiled and said that since he helped her bury her family, why don't they become like family to each other? Chu Shu pondered for a while. After that, he said that of course he agreed. Their hands touched, and the girl said that they had agreed. From now on, they were like family to each other. After Chu Shu read the newspaper, he went to the forest. By then, it had already gotten dark and the stars in the sky appeared. The guy used telepathy. With that, he addressed Tao Yao's younger sister, saying that he had a request for her. Chu wanted her to help him find someone. However, he didn't say who exactly. By then, the girl had already come to him to fulfill the request. Tao Yao greeted him cheerfully. Afterwards, she asked him what he was thinking about, looking at the moon alone. Chu Shu also said hello to her. Afterwards, he said that it was nothing special, he just decided to remember the past times. Well, all of a sudden, the sister said that Big Brother had been in Yunxia Mountain for 30 years. When the county of Cheshan Mortal Kingdom was attacked by the demon race, it was the master who defeated the demons and brought him back. Time flies by very quickly. The girl looked at her brother and said that he was actually very lucky. He was only 3 years old at the time. However, he was able to survive the demon attack. Tao Yao took his hands and added that as many people say, if you survived the disaster, it means you are patronized by luck, and he is the chosen one. She also added that Chishan County was his home. However, the sacred lands are also his home, and he and the master are his family. The sister smiled and said that if he ever felt sad or homesick, he could turn to her. Chushu hugged his sister and smiled, and said that he would definitely do it, and she was his salvation. But in reality, 30 years ago, Chushu's trash didn't survive due to luck. It was him, Demon Chu, who had planned it all in advance. Of course, the meeting with Chi Meng Di was also planned to infiltrate Tai Su's sacred lands. Tao Yao thought at this moment that her brother had changed a lot recently. He used to avoid her all the time, but now he was quite open. At this moment, the girl stood up on her toes and kissed her brother on the cheek, a sign of affection. Chu Shu was very surprised by such a gesture. At that moment, however, the girl pulled out an envelope and held it out to him, telling him that it was the very report he was so eager to receive. After that, Tao Yao turned around and started to leave, telling him to go to bed early, and she would go and do some skill development. Chu Shu didn't reply anything to that. He was shocked and didn't understand why she had suddenly kissed him. However, the guy tried to calm down. After that, he unfolded the envelope and looked at the paper. It said that 3 days ago, Liu Hongyi had appeared in Changgang City on the eastern continent. Chu certainly knew this city, and thought that it would be a bit more difficult than he thought. At this very time in the eastern continent in the great Tang Empire, everything was ablaze. The man who ruled this city was lying on the floor of his chamber. He turned to the girl and asked if she was about to become like the demon Chu. Maybe she wants to make all of humanity her enemy and end up just like him. The girl's name was Liu Hongyi. She was the main divine daughter of the leader of the Red Dust Sword clan. The girl's eyes were closed, rewrapped with a bandage. She answered nothing to the man's words, but simply flew through the air. The man continued to shout. He said that their Ji family would never forgive her for this, and they would definitely tear her into small pieces. The girl was tired of listening to all this. She activated her abilities, and a bright turquoise beam struck the men directly in the heart. After that, she flew around for a while longer, holding her huge sword in her hands. The girl was pleased with herself. But then, suddenly, when Liu Hong landed on the ground, she heard some voice behind her. It was rough and quiet. He asked what she was going to do next. The girl replied that she would kill absolutely every last one of them, and they would suffer. Then a voice asked, "Is she really going to fight alone against the whole world for him?" Liu Hong confidently said that the world was his enemy, so her enemy too. If he was a Buddha, she would go through all the suffering for his sake. If there was a demon, she would kill everyone for it and spare no effort or life of her own. At this time, Chu Shu did not leave the forest. He sat beside a magic tree and tried out his abilities. A huge book appeared behind him. He hadn't actually cultivated the martial arts that were obtained as a reward for passing Tai Su Tower, and as of now, there was no one around. Now was the best time to cultivate. Then the 9th hero's truth alert came to him. It is also known as the 9 secrets, the strongest law, the secrets of heaven and earth. Upon completion of the 9 secrets, a disciple can become invincible. And the secret of Xingzi is the fastest secret technique in the world. When developed to its maximum, it can break through all the strongest formations without the possibility of stopping. The only problem was that it was difficult to understand, and a cultivator would need very strong talents and understanding. Chu Shu stretched after reading all of this, and thought that the secret of Xingzi would indeed be difficult to master. In fact, almost 3 days had already passed since then, and he still couldn't understand it at all. But then suddenly the man felt someone else's energy behind him. Without turning around, he immediately asked, "Who is it?" A beautiful girl appeared behind him. She said that her name was Hua Luofei. She is an elder from Daoyun Peak, and asked if he was Chu Shu. Chu began to scrutinize the girl and saw a strange element on her chest. He didn't understand why she was suddenly wearing her son's seal. The guy thought that it simply couldn't be, that Tai Su-ji used another form to meet him. That's interesting enough, in his opinion. Then he bowed and introduced himself, saying that he welcomed the elder, and inquired if he could find out why she had suddenly arrived. Hua Luo replied that she was out for a walk, and after finishing her business on Yunxia Mountain, she happened to see him. She sat down on the ground and said that seeing how hard he was working for cultivation, the girl believed that he was planning to visit the elusive demonic wasteland. Chu said correctly. In the elusive demonic wasteland, there are many opportunities for development. However, with these opportunities, there are also dangers, so he must develop diligently to be prepared for them. At this moment, the girl was thinking about his words, and Chu Xiu began to scrutinize her carefully. He thought that she was incredibly beautiful, and it was not difficult to fall in love with her. The fellow then sat down beside her, and turning to the elder, said that her disciple interested him and asked if she would give him some advice. Hua Luo looked at him and said that of course he could ask whatever he was interested in. Chu said that before Emperor Lu's era, there was only one person, the Great Emperor or Demon Emperor, who appeared once every 1,000,000 years. It was just that humans had fought the demon race even before the beginning of the Abandoned Age era, before Emperor Lu's era. He asked, why didn't humanity completely destroy the demons with Emperor Lu, or why didn't the demons completely destroy the humans when their great emperor appeared? In fact, Chu can't understand this very coming to the Tangsen continent. Since he met Tai Suji on this day, the guy assumed that maybe she could give him an answer to it. Hua Luo said that there was most likely some sort of agreement between the human emperor and the demon emperor. Even if a great emperor was born on one side, he was able to suppress the other side but not use his strength to destroy the opponents. In fact, no one really knows why things turned out the way they did. Some say that when you become a great emperor, you learn the secrets of the stars and the continent of Tangsen. Chu, upon hearing this, asked, is there really someone stronger than the greatest emperor in this world? The girl said that no one knows this. Is there anyone stronger than the great emperor before the Abandoned Age era and after the Abandoned Age era of the Primordial era and the Emperor Lu era? There are already 17 great emperors. At this point, the girl looked up at the stars and said that they eventually disappeared, and no one could find any trace of them. Hua Luo said that those who can become great emperors have unrivaled rare talent, but she doesn't understand why they didn't decide to take this step. Whether there is no further path or there is no future, this is something they can only guess about. Then suddenly, the girl stood up and said that they were going to discuss great emperor cultivation, because it was too ambitious. Chu Xiu was a little disappointed and asked if she was already planning to leave. The girl replied that she had to go now and told him to work hard on his cultivation. Chu Xiu was uncomfortable with the whole situation, but then he asked if they would ever meet again. Hua Luo replied that they might meet when he returned from the elusive demonic wasteland. The guy liked the idea and said he would wait for her at this place after he returned. The girl giggled and said she would definitely come. Then Chu received a notification from the system that the host was really charming since such a girl had fallen for him. After that, Chu Xiu practiced for a bit more and then began to return to his home. In fact, cultivating the secrets of the Xingzi was taking up too much energy. The guy was heading to Qi Mengdi's room. He decided to find the master and ask for cultivation materials again. But then suddenly, when he reached the door, Da heard some talking. A male voice called Master Auntie and said that she must help him, or else it will be too late. She is Chu Xiu's master, and if she asked him for the Emperor Divine Sand, he would definitely give it to her. Meng Di turned to the Menger and said that it didn't mean that she didn't want to help him. If she, as Master Chu Xiu, were to ask him for something without a reason, it would be wrong. Chu Xiu opened the door slightly at this moment and began to observe everything that was happening. He saw a man standing next to the master. The guy took a closer look and realized that it was Meng Di's nephew. In fact, he had been treating little sister Xiaoran badly all along, and Chu Xiu thought that he was strong. However, apparently he is very weak. Chu smiled evilly and thought that since his dear nephew wanted to get his hands on the Emperor's sacred golden sand so badly, he should be taught a lesson. At this point, he came into the room and turned to the Menger and asked if he really needed that gold sand so badly. The guy immediately turned to him and told him he was here after all, and asked if he still had that golden sand. Chu Xiu said that he still has it. The guy had been cultivating for the past few days and hadn't seen his younger sister Xiao Ran. He was looking for an opportunity to hand it over to her. Menger immediately glowed with joy. He said maybe the guy could just hand it to me and he could help him give it to the girl. Chudo took out a golden sand from his pocket and said that he had acquired it after facing great hardships. The guy at this moment thought that if he took away this golden sand, he would be the only person in all of Tangsen to have it. And when the time comes, Chu Xiaoran, who wants to save her mother, will beg him to give up that sand she so desperately needs. Menger took his hands and asked that the guy tell him the price. Chu asked what he thought about 1 million yuan premium stones. He immediately agreed and said that Chu Shu was a very good person. In fact, he thought that the guy would refuse him. However, who knew that he was so generous after all? Chu explained that he was the master's nephew, so naturally he was his good friend. Menger agreed and said that indeed, he and he were good friends. At this point, he handed over the money and took his gold sand. But then suddenly the guy said he had some more sand and asked if he wanted more, and why not sell them all for the same price. Nephew said that he somehow wanted a lot, and he thought to himself that he actually needed to become the sole owner of the silver sand. Otherwise, he wouldn't be able to blackmail Chu Xiaoran. Chu said that there was actually a little more left, and then he took out a whole pile of sand. Menger was very surprised and asked, did he really call it a little? But the guy then said that actually if he didn't buy everything, he would just keep it. The nephew objected and said he was being cheeky, and then turned to his aunt and asked why she wasn't watching him. Meng Di said that would be enough. He's already gotten his silver sand, so let him go. The guy tried to object, but realized it would be useless, so he turned around and started to walk away. As the door slammed shut, the master turned to the unruly apprentice and asked why he had provoked him so much. Chu was very surprised that she thought he was provoking him, and said that it was actually an equal exchange. He then walked closer to the girl and sat next to her, and then asked her what she had just called him. Meng Di became uncomfortable around him, and she replied that he was an unruly student. Then he took the wand that had a feather on it, and said she was obliged to call him brother. Then the guy started tickling the girl with this stick, and she screamed out for him to dream of never again she would call him like that. Suddenly, Chu said that Master's figure had gained a little weight compared to before, and asked if she had really gained weight. The guy asked that the Master let him have a good look at her body and kept tickling with that feather. At this moment, the girl grabbed the fruit that was lying nearby and threw it straight at Chu Xiu. However, the guy reacted in time and managed to catch it before the fruit hit him. Meng Di started screaming and told him to get lost. Of course she wasn't gaining weight, and asked for him to get off her back. Chu took a bite of the fruit and ignored the girl's words. He asked if she had done what he had ordered her to do recently. The master replied that everything was in the imperial hall, so she asked that he let her out and she would bring everything. And so, after a while, the two of them came to the Qi Mengdi Imperial Hall. They sat on a bed that was nearby. Chu hurriedly asked, "And where is the thing he needs?" The girl immediately went under the pillow, under which lay the thing that Chu needed. She took out a chest, and when she opened it, there were 3 small yellow-colored pebbles inside. Chu Xiu immediately began to look at one of them, and said that what one would expect from a master was that she was an excellent creator. Meng Di was proud of herself. She said that this stone could not only emit light but also create heat. The guy moved closer to her and said that by using these stones to massage the tender places of her feet, they would be able to restore her health and enhance her cultivation. And at the same moment, Chu began to gently stroke the master's leg with this stone. The girl immediately became indignant and told him not to do that. Well, the guy of course didn't hear her. He looked the girl straight in the eyes and said that she was a beautiful woman. Meng Di yelled at him and asked, "Did he really ask her to create this thing just to bully her?" However, at that moment, Chu shoved the girl a bit so she fell straight onto the bed. She didn't know what to do because she realized that it wouldn't end well. The guy moved closer to her and asked if that was what the master wanted, but Meng Di replied that she was mistaken. However, of course, the girl had no choice. Chu Xiu, as always, did what he wanted. And so, after quite a large amount of time, Chu Xiu finally stopped. he received a notification that his skills had been improved. The guy realized that the divine body effect greatly increased the possessor's strength. Meng Di lay on the bed exhausted afterward. She couldn't even move. The boy thought at this moment that small cats were also good for something. When the girl heard the door slam shut, she was glad he was finally gone. In fact, Chu had gotten so caught up in narcissizing himself that he even forgot to put a restriction on her. Apparently, he forgot to seal her powers before leaving. The master decided to test it right away. She was the one who sat down in a special pose and activated her abilities. She noticed that he had indeed forgotten to do it. Meng Di was very pleased to finally be able to cultivate. It was very good for her to feel the power filling her body. She could feel the spiritual energy of this world again. But then suddenly, the girl was very surprised. She noticed that while this time was sealed, her cultivation had advanced. She didn't know if it had anything to do with Chu. At this moment, the girl made a special ball with her energy and thought that the guy wouldn't feel bad after all. But then suddenly that ball suddenly vaporized. The girl no longer felt the power she had a second ago. Meng Di didn't understand why it was her that was being sealed again. At this moment, she heard Chu's voice in her head saying that her disciple was just teaching her a lesson. Next, if they were far apart, he could still seal her. This made the master very angry. She took the doll, which was very similar to Chu, and started stabbing it with a needle, calling it various ugly words. But then suddenly the girl felt something strange in her stomach. She felt as if something was moving in there. It scared her. Just like that, an entire week had passed from that moment. Chu Xiu was in front of the portal to the secret realm of the wasteland beast realm. There were actually quite a few people gathered there. The girl who stood in front of the portal said that, as always, the secret realm would only open for 30 days. In those 30 days, everyone must gather at the teleport point, or be locked away in a secret realm for centuries until the next discovery. The girl also said that after leaving the secret realm, everyone would have to give away a certain portion of their fines, and at the meeting, all donations would be appreciated. And those students who rank in the top 10 for donations will receive welcome awards. Chu. It wasn't really interesting to listen to all of this. He wished the girl would shut up already. After all, he doesn't care about their rewards. He only wants to get to the demon fruit devotion in that realm. The girl also told all the people to wait for the portal to open, and only then would they be able to enter this secret realm. Suddenly, Chu Xiu heard a familiar voice. A guy was running up to him and calling out to him excitedly. When he got closer, he said hello to his brother and asked if he was going to the wasteland as well. Chu Xiu recognized him. It was Brother Ye, and said that of course he was departing as well as himself. At this point, the guy thought about traveling with the kid protagonist and decided that it wasn't going to be very peaceful. Suddenly, Chu Xiu saw the strange expression on the guy's face and asked him what he was thinking about. Maybe something was wrong. Brother E replied that there was nothing wrong and suggested that he go away to talk for a while. The boy, of course, agreed. Then they started to walk to the side, to talk in private without unnecessary people. As they were walking, Ye Fan heard someone's voice. However, there was no one nearby. He said that when the fellow entered the secret realm, if he had the chance, he should eliminate Chu Xiu for that person. This voice belonged to a girl who was sitting in a tree nearby in an ancient forest of centuries-old trees. She told him to be careful not to leave any footprints, and it would be much better if Chu died in the mouth of a wasteland monster, and even if the divine servants used temporal regression, they wouldn't realize what happened. This girl was the master of the Sacred Ball Peak, and her name was Liu Shui. In fact, she had trained several disciples to destroy Meng Di's favorite, Chu Shui, as soon as he entered the secret realm. The girl thought to herself, so that the master wouldn't browbeat her for her cruelty. After all, he had the misfortune to be apprenticed to such a disgusting person like her. But at that moment, some boat passed by her. Zhang Lingyun was on it. He asked in surprise, "Is it really true that Big Brother is at the peak? They are supposed to be brothers after all." And he didn't understand if it would be good to do such a thing. Isn't he afraid of embarrassing Yunxia after Chu Xiu's death? Right now, he is incredibly genius at his peak. and is the presumptive candidate for the role of the Holy Sun. The second disciple of Yun Xia Peak, Xiao Yifeng, said that a dead genius would no longer be a genius, and dead brothers are the best brothers. The man also added that Chu Shu was causing nothing but trouble everywhere. Getting rid of him was the right decision after all. Liu Shui, hearing their conversation, realized that apparently she is not alone. She wants to get rid of Chu Shu, but that's not surprising because Qi Mengdi is a bad person, which means her disciples can't be good either. Chu Shu was already going about his business at this moment. Their meeting at the portal had already ended. Suddenly, two girls approached him and called out to him. It was Tiao Yao's sister. When the girl saw Xiao Ran, she was very surprised. She asked why this girl was also in this place. Xiao Ran calmly replied that of course she had come to say goodbye to Big Brother Chu. Chu Shu said at this moment, wondering what brought the two sisters to this place at such a moment. Tiao Yao went to him and brought the sword, saying that it was a heavy sword that he asked her to find. It was good that she found it in a few days, so she hurried to this place to give it to him. She really hopes that it will help him in battle. This sword was the dragon sword of the Overlord. This sword was created from the spinal cord bone of an ancient azure dragon beast. It is a strong and heavy dominating weapon. However, if one's physical strength did not match the sword and it was used forcibly, there would be a high chance of harming even oneself. At this moment, Chu swept his sword through the air and his strength activated. Chu Shu, after seeing its power, thanked his little sister and said that it was a great sword. Tiao Yao smiled and said that it was all for Big Brother's pleasure, and it wasn't hard for her to find. Well then, she also told him to be very careful when entering the wasteland. The secret realm is opened every few centuries, and is full of ancient, strong, demonic monsters. She wants him not to take any chances in vain. Chu Shu stroked her head and smiled, thanking his little sister for worrying about him. However, he would still be careful. The sister replied that in that case, she would be calm. But then suddenly, the guy turned to Xiao Ran's younger sister and asked her what had brought her to him. The girl was holding a sack in her hands. She said that she had found some formation materials. They might come in handy in the secret realm. Chu said that she was very attentive and he liked it. Xiao Ran thanked him for Silver Sand and the Emperor because her mom was already even able to stand on her feet. She also asked if he could stop by for tea when he got back, as her mom really wanted to thank him in person. Chu replied that she was too kind. However, when he returned, he would definitely bring a gift and visit her mom. Tiao Yao, watching all of this, was very angry. She didn't like the way they were talking to each other. But soon everyone was gathered near the portal again, and the head girl said that the teleporter had been activated. The students who were qualified could enter the portal. Chu bowed in front of his sisters and said that it was time for him to go, and he would go take his seat. When the guy left, Tiao Yao turned to the girl and said that Big Brother was in a big hurry, and she hadn't finished speaking after all. But Xiao Ran replied that there were a lot of things in the secret realm that Big Brother Chu Shu needed. So it was no wonder that he couldn't wait to enter there soon. Tiao Yao became very angry. She started yelling at the girl and told her to stay away from her big brother and not to act like she understood him well. Xiao Ran was surprised and asked what she meant by that. There is only a formal and honest relationship between her and Chu. They are not as messy as she thinks they are. The girl asked why she should stay away from him all of a sudden. Without waiting for a reply, she smiled and told her sister that there was no reason to be angry. Anger would only lead to wrinkles, which she didn't want at such a young age. Tiao Yao angrily asked if she really thought she was mad. The girl hesitated and said that she was acting like a nanny, so it was no wonder Chu Shu ran away from her so quickly. The girl got even more angry at this moment and asked if she intended to provoke her. At this moment, pink lights appeared around her. It was a strong surge of energy. At this time, the people who had already entered the portal were walking through the secret realm of the monster wasteland. It was a thick and dark forest. Many warriors were surprised. They didn't know that the wasteland monster realm would be so large. Then one of the men said that according to his master, the diameter of the wasteland was 10 million miles, and that's about 1/24th the size of North City. Some people gathered in a circle. One of them said that with such a huge territory there were many possibilities, and suggested that they should join together to find the treasure, so that they would not lose too much time. Chu Xiu separated himself away from them, and thought about whether he should find Ye Fan to begin with. If he traveled with him, he would be able to gain his trust. The main character, and many possibilities could be revealed to him. Well, this is suddenly the guy heard people shouting. One of the warriors said that he saw Chu Xiu and proposed to go all together. Guy immediately hid behind a tree to avoid being found. Chu didn't understand what was even going on. Did he really insult someone? But he hadn't done anything like that. The people came closer and closer to him. They held their weapons in their hands and ran straight after Chu Xiu. The guy immediately started to run away. He said that there was no way he would fight with them. At this point, he summoned his boat and thought it would be best to back away from them in this situation. Chu Xiu quickly jumped into his boat and began to swim away from all those crazy warriors. The people who were left below shouted that he was running away and needed to be caught immediately. But then one of them reassured the people by saying that there was no need to worry, because before going out, Big Brother John Ling had given him a compass that tracked aura. Even if he goes underground, they can still find him. The people were serious, and Chu Xiu kept running away. Soon the guy flew to the mountain, on which just like that grew the fruit of the soul of the child of demons. However, the whole difficulty was that he was guarded by a huge python, which was a demonic wasteland monster of the demon emperor level. Chu Xiu, of course, was not afraid of this. He grabbed his huge sword and activated the secret of Shin's head, and then went to attack that monster. And in this fight, he certainly came out victorious. Chu Xiu easily cut off the head of the giant python, and then some small flower suddenly appeared in front of him. He received a notification asking him if he wanted to trade this flower for the opportunity to get breakthrough points. Chu didn't think twice and immediately agreed to the exchange. The system said that the exchange was successful, and he received 70,000 breakthrough points. The guy crouched down on the ground for a bit of a break and looked at his stats. Many had increased. Then he decided to check the secret of the head of the sin. The system sent a notification that due to the origin of his body, his natural talents had been enhanced, and his understanding of the secret of the Shin head had advanced. He gained insight with a preliminary glance. Chu took a little breather and stood up from his seat, thinking that this was the time to fertilize the ground and take his fruit, the child of the demonic soul. Soon he finally reached the highest mountain on which the fruit was growing. He came closer and realized that, judging from the color of the fruit, it must not be ripe yet.